Hello again. All my life I have felt like an accidental Australian. I can see how beautiful it is here, the beaches and the lifestyle, but I've never really felt like it was home. I've always been drawn to something else. Rivers, mountains, old houses, history and England. And maybe that's because my parents' story begins in England. When I arrive in Yorkshire, I will be hunting the hunters and other associated family names who belong on my mother's tree. So far, I have uncovered a double murderer, a Quaker father who refused to allow his son to marry, so he promptly ran off to Gretna Green and did the deed anyway, another grandfather of questionable sanity, and I'm hoping to find much more. But today, I'm talking about my father's family. My grandfather, Eric Percival Carson, never knew where the name Percival came from. He just assumed it was a family name, as it was his father's name as well. And he was right. We always knew that his father, Frederick James Percival Carson, had been born in a wagon in 1873 while crossing the Rocky Mountains of Colorado. But that was all we knew. So I set about finding out. And back when I started, there was no online research. You had to book into a Latter-day Saints research centre and search microfiche reels. I found and bought my great-grandfather's death certificate in the hope that it would shed some light. But unfortunately, the information was filled out by a grandson who apparently knew less than what we did. The death certificate stated that he was the son of Samuel Carson and Sarah Spencer. It gave his date of birth and it gave his location of birth. Those were the only accurate facts. His death certificate also stated that he was a widow and that his wife's maiden name had been Day. Armed with this new information, I approached St. Catherine's house, which is where the certificates had to be located from. I requested a birth certificate or a marriage certificate and was horrified to find that neither were available. They didn't exist. There was no such marriage and no such birth. I had hit a massive brick wall. I ended up hiring a researcher to find out why there were no records. He was excellent. He came back with a Frederick James Percival being born to a Samuel Spencer Percival and a Sarah Brooks on the correct date, in the correct location. This then opened up a floodgate of information and I was able to find out everything I needed to know, except why they had changed their name. This information only came to me 37 years later. It was one night in Australia while I was reading the online historical newspapers for Denver, Colorado. I found the answer. Thank you, technology. As far back as I can be certain, my fourth times grandfather was James Percival, a baker, according to his death certificate. He was born in 1768. He married a widow by the name of Anne Craft, formerly Anne Kidd, from Strood, near Rochester. Anne first married a man named Thomas Craft, also a baker, also in Strood. But he died when their two children were still tiny babies. Within a year, Anne had married James. They proceeded to have 9 more children together, 11 in total, all born in Strood, Kent. They were nonconformists and their children were baptised in the Zor Chapel in Strood. Surprisingly, all the children but one lived until adulthood. In 1822, they advertised their bakery for sale and moved the entire family to London. Anne died in 1844, aged 73, and James died in 1850, aged 82, of natural decay. Years later, I stood in London, outside 42 Rupel Street in Lambeth, the very house listed on his death certificate, and I looked through the window and I imagined the life inside, wishing I could step back in time, just for a moment. I have a copy of James's will, and it tells its own story. He named all his surviving children in order of birth, including his son John's widow and his stepchildren, leaving them all an equal share. Fairness, decency, a man who remembered everyone. His son was Samuel Spencer Percival, a carpenter, and he was my third great-grandfather. He was born in Strood, Kent, and married Sarah Brooks, the daughter of William Brooks, a Bow Street jeweller. Samuel and Sarah had 9 children, and their eldest surviving son was Frederick James Percival, my second great-grandfather, also a carpenter. And he is responsible for moving the family across the pond to America. He is the one responsible for them coming to Australia. In 1870, Frederick, along with his wife and 4 daughters, migrated to America, landing in New York. The family headed across the wide expanse of unfamiliar and hostile country to Colorado, which at the time was reported to be progressive and new, with opportunities for those wanting a new life. His wife was heavily pregnant at the time and gave birth to my great-grandfather in a wagon in the middle of nowhere, with no doctors or medical assistance. Her name was Elizabeth Day. She was born in Lincolnshire in England. She had packed up her entire life and followed her husband in the belief of a better life. As a carpenter, Frederick found plentiful work and established his workshop in Greeley. All was going well until the panic of 1873, when there was a major global economic crash. Banks collapsed, railways failed, and many new settlers faced financial ruin. Frederick, who had taken on contract work, was one of them. By the time the bankruptcy notices hit the newspaper in 1878, he was long gone. He had gathered his family, taken what money he could, and quietly left America. In 1882, a ship named the Albion leaves New Zealand heading for Australia. On this ship is a family, a mother, a father, 5 daughters, and 1 son, bearing similar names to the Percival family. But the surname was different. The surname was Carson. Australia was good to the Carson family, adding 2 more daughters to the mix and providing the stable lifestyle to the entrepreneurial Frederick J. He became a successful government contractor, and before long, the family flourished. My fascination with genealogy, England, and history has definitely unearthed a few things that Frederick J. wanted to stay hidden. And I wonder if Grandmother Elizabeth, being a native from Lincolnshire, found the Australian heat as oppressive as I do. Mind you, she didn't have the luxury of air conditioning in those days. As I prepare for my trip to England, I wonder whether she wished she could go back. Did she miss her family and friends? Did she miss her old life? I guess there are some things we will just never know. So I will leave you with this thought, and I'll see you next time when I tell you about my mother's family.